Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Modern Market. Every day we discuss everything to do with the modern market, that is crypto market, the NFT market, the Bitcoin market, and the Hyperliquid market. That is what we're going to be talking about today. We've got Bitcoin all-time high at 111K, just dipped a little bit from there. Got hype up 17% to $31. We also got FIFA on Avalanche. That was a cool new headline, just sneaking into the show just before we went live. Delighted to say we've got OSF from Rekt Drinks, Rekt Brands, dialing in a little bit later towards the end of the show to give us his thoughts on what's going on in the market, as well as talking Rekt and the extraordinary rise of the brand coin Rekt, up 5x over the last month after a big dip down during the time where everything went down. But a bit of a rise from the ashes there. Very excited to talk to Ovi a little bit later. And we've got the usual stuff as well. We're going to be talking price action on crypto, NFTs, and obviously the majors. Got some interesting data points to share specifically today. So looking forward to getting into that. I've got Legendary in the co-host seat with me. We're ready to get into it, but just a reminder, friends, that nothing that we say here is financial advice. The market is very, very risky. So please proceed with caution, exercise your own judgment, and do your own research. Do your own research. Legendary, that is the introduction. How are you doing? How are you feeling? It's Thursday. It's the 22nd of May. Coins are going up. How are you feeling about that?
GM. It is Bitcoin Pizza Day. Happy Bitcoin Pizza Day. And it is all-time high. I mean, there's no reason not to feel great.
That's true. Has anyone charted price every, you know how people do, like, you know, the price of Bitcoin every January the 1st or something, or every Christmas for the last 8 years, and then you just see Bitcoin's price and it's like, wow, this is a tremendous asset. It feels like Bitcoin Pizza Day should have, no, the way it should be is it should be how much the pizza costs on every year from the beginning up until the future. Any idea how much the pizza now costs, Legendary?
I mean, for pizza is like what, 20 bucks? How much is a pizza? 20 bucks? Then it's like 0.00002 BTC, roughly.
Oh, but I thought, I mean, how much did the pizza cost that was bought in Bitcoin back in the day?
That was 10K BTC for that pizza, right? That was a billion, 1.2 bill now. 1.1 bill, sorry.
That's what I mean. So every Bitcoin Pizza Day, that's the metric. That's how much the pizza cost. That's the metric. That's the way around I want it to be reported moving forward. Good stuff. To show the pizza inflation. Otherwise, how are things otherwise? You released a little poll just a second ago. Curious to hear your thoughts on that before we get into the headlines and stuff.
I actually did. Let me check in with it. I asked the question, how many of you own at least one Bitcoin or hold at least one Bitcoin? It has 250 votes. It goes on for 23 more, so I do hope it gets some more votes in there. The split right now is roughly 27% saying yes, they are holding more than or at least one BTC, and 73% obviously then saying no, they don't. And also obviously funky commenting, you know which category I'm in. As my wife loves to say when her students ask, how many Bitcoins do you own? More than one, but not enough. To be honest, there will never be enough. Every time we finish another full coin or hit a target, she just revises the goal upwards. I do love that.
Yeah, it's going to look very nice in hindsight, right? It's going to look very, very nice in hindsight. People who are just stacking the coins. I agree with this take from Rahim in the YouTube comments. Legendary is smiling way too much. Spill the tea. I'm assuming it's because you're seeing all these people tell you that they have no Bitcoins while you have been stacking. Is that why you're smiling too much, or is that just a general smile you've got there?
That would be mean. Let's say it's a general smile. Let's stick with that narrative. Okay. It's a smile because of the markets being beautiful and green.
Okay. So that's the narrative that you're saying, but you're saying it's not necessarily the truth.
Exactly.
Okay. That's fine. Right. Look, we are going to be talking a lot more about Bitcoin today, so don't worry about that. We will also be talking about hype. There's some particular metrics that I wanted to share. So we will get into that conversation, and maybe we'll even talk about how we were talking about hype a lot all the way through from January, February during the dips as well. But we'll get to all of that in just a little bit. But before we do that, let's start with getting you up to speed with the price action. As usual, we've got Bitcoin up 4% at a $110,700. It did go as high as 111.5. It's up 8% on the week. ETH is up 5% in the last 24 hours, up 5% on the week. Obviously, very much outperformed for a short period of time. Last week, it's at 2.6K, while Bitcoin is now at 110. XRP is up 3% to $2.40. BNB is up 4% as well to 683. Solana is up 6% to $178. Touching in on our other kind of favorite majors as well, just to take into account what they are. SUI's up almost 7% to $4.10. And AVAX is actually, up 10% to $24. Just got to shout that out. Hyperliquid, though, which is, realistically our favorite of these other majors, 18% up to $31, up 27% in the last month. Hard to outperform that, in my opinion, at the moment. Getting into the meme coin side of things, we have another green day across the board. We've got Doge up almost 7% to 24 cents. Pepe's up 8% as well. Trump's up 7%. Bonk's up 10%. Fartcoin is up 18%. WIF is up 18. Pengu's up almost 10. SPX, Murad's coin, is up 25.
Wait, Fartcoin is back at $1.50.
Which one?
Fartcoin is back at $1.50.
Correct. Shit. That is correct.
How much is that over the last month, though?
22.
Nice. I kind of had it like pegged at 1.1, 1.2 in my head. Completely missed it move to 1.5.
It was at 1.2 like 3 days ago or 2 days ago or something like that. After being at around 1.3, 1.4. Are you a Fartcoin enjoyer, Legendary?
I am. I actually am, yeah.
As in, do you just enjoy it or do you hold it?
I hold it, yeah.
Yeah, me too. Just a little bit though from, I've been trading in and out of it from a bit lower than here. Any other notable ones here? It's kind of the same across the board, these kind of low double-digit gains. Popcat's up 17, Mog's up 16, Turbo's up, Dog's up 24, Turbo's up 6, Peanut's up 12. So a lot, that's the kind of region we're looking at. A lot of green though across the board in general with those. Launchcoin, conversely, is down 18% back to 200 mil. A bit of steam getting taken out of that ecosystem, I think, at the moment, as everything else is moving. Getting into the headlines themselves, obviously there's no snapshot today. I've been out at a very important breakfast meeting, but I've not missed on what the main things for discussion are. Obviously, Bitcoin's at an all-time high, hit 111K before just dropping down a bit. Legendary will take us through a bit of an interesting report published on Bitcoin not long ago, as well as touch on this crazy Bitcoin long that's taking place on Hyperliquid at the moment. I believe it is a record for on-chain position. But Legendary will explain that in a little bit. We'll also talk about hype being up 17% to $31. And then FIFA, the main football organization, the real football, the soccer of the world, going on to AVAX with their blockchain. So we'll talk about all of that in just a little bit. Anything else catching your attention from around the space, Legendary? What's going on in NFTs as the whole market is pumping? Is there anything else that's kind of catching your attention?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's take a look at the NFT majors. It is a bit of a red day for some of them. Pudgy Penguins are down another 3.5% now at a 9.4 ETH floor. Doodles are down 2.5%. Bored Apes are flat. And Meebits are the ones who are celebrating a pretty green day. They're up almost 9% at a 0.95 ETH floor. And also up 20% over the last 7 days. And Another collection that minted yesterday, one that I particularly enjoyed seeing doing well, is Monsters.fund, the capsules, given that I am an advisor to that project. They, a small collection, 750 supply, minted at 0.12 ETH and is now sitting at 0.6 ETH. It's not the only thing that's moving on Abstract. What's the name of the other collection? Not penguins, obviously. Do you know which I'm talking about? The
on-chain heroes?
No. Pengs traced? Yeah. No, Pengs tracted. that one is also doing quite.
Do you want to be
a lot.
sharing this on the screen, Ledge? It's not on the screen at the moment.
Yeah,
I don't
I'm
know if you
looking
want
for
to
it.
sharing it.
There we go.
Here we go.
And also did quite a lot of volume, did a total of 1,400 ETH in volume, and
What?
800 ETH of that over the last 24 hours.
And what's this floor price?
0.03 ETH.
Okay, so fairly affordable on that side. Yeah, I agree. The Monsters mint was pretty cool. I'm a small investor there as well. Moody seems to be doing a good job getting people super excited about that. One comment on the abstract ecosystem, though, I do think on the meme coin side of things, it's a bit dicey in the sense that there's a lot of people playing in like really low cap stuff, and you know, on moves up, it can feel beautiful because you're obviously getting in like really early, and then the price is going up. But it works both ways. Is what is basically the point. These market caps do on some way, because there's not the titanic volume that there is on Solana with all of this stuff. This stuff can be moved by not a lot of people, and so that feels great on the way up, but on the way down, it can feel not so good. So that's just one point. I wonder, I don't know if you've been messing around in the abstract meme trenches as much, Legendary. Have you got a take there?
I did. I honestly don't feel comfortable to post about that on the timeline.
Yeah, because it's just a bit too low market cap, right?
Yeah, like the biggest one, Appster, is at 20M. Then you have Node at 15M. That's the only two basically above 10M. And then you have Poly being the third largest one. And a lot of people are posting about that. And it's sitting at 4.6M. And I don't really feel comfortable to be like, yes, I bought Poly earlier than that, but I don't want to like post a 1M market cap coin on the timeline. There's nothing wrong with doing that per se. It's just not something that I would like to do because, yeah, it feels too small of a market cap for me personally to share about that. But it's generally a more a smaller ecosystem. Also,
Yeah.
sorry, I forgot that there's a couple more above. I had the wrong filter. I need to correct myself. There is probably like another one or two above 10M as well that I missed before.
Yeah, you do have a bunch that are a little bit higher, but I'm saying in general, the playground for abstract memes are like fairly low cap at the moment, at least. And it's like definitely a risky venture. I mean, all memes are risky, but you know what I mean. I'm saying this is even further down the risk curve. Shout out to English in the comments saying, did you see all SUI memes got decimated? To be honest, English, I did not know that SUI had memes. So maybe that's good for me, at least in this instance. Something about an LP being drained. That's unfortunate. Very, very unfortunate. Hope the people who are affected are okay, so they can lose their money a different way instead of buying Bitcoin. One thing I wanted to just bring up here, Ledge, was the ETH to BTC chart. So we just went through those prices again, and then we just once again said, okay, Bitcoin's up 4% on the day, up 7% on the week. And, ETH is up. Let's just check where it was. We've got ETH up 5%, up also 5% on the week. So no kind of bigger performance there. But if you look at this chart, which I'm going to share, if you can let me share for a second. Look, we have friends and we have a lot of people asking us sometimes, like, what do we do with ETH? I am very conscious. I'm always conscious of the people who rightly dunked on all ETH investors. And I'm talking about this from an investor perspective. Had a good conversation earlier today about ETH, and there's still a lot to believe in. I want to make that really clear. There's still many aspects which I believe in, but from an investor perspective, it has obviously underperformed. You must see that versus Solana over the last cycle. So that has obviously happened. And then it's just been putting these lower and lower lows over the last year. You can see it trending down all the time. It has obviously kicked back a touch in the last week or 10 days or so with the run up last week, where it went from like 1,600 to back to 2.5K. That was a big move. And so you see this tick up here. But then Bitcoin's kind of rallied back again this week. How would you be thinking about it, Ledge, or how are you allocated personally when it comes to Bitcoin, ETH, and other majors?
I still have a very fair amount of ETH, and I'm very self-aware of the fact that I love dunking on ETH on the timeline, but I still just hold a ton. I've been holding ETH for such a long time that I find it still incredibly useful. And I obviously have all of my stable coins and everything sitting on ETH as well, as opposed to having them on Solana. So I am a bit I'm still a bit torn, to be honest. Like, ETH is useful. Most of my activity is spent on one of the EVMs either way. Most of my assets are there either way, apart from the native BTC that I hold. But I also am aware of the fact that for ETH to function, it doesn't need to go to a new all-time high. I am very comfortable with ETH being in the 2 to 3K range because I can do all the things I want to do, and I can hold enough ETH and don't really mind that fluctuation too much. I don't know if this like ETH to 10K is still, a thing that will happen or not. It's hard to have a gut feeling on that. I personally don't, but I'm happy with where ETH is at the moment, to be honest.
This is what I'm hearing. I'm hearing that everyone should have like a budget of ETH. It's like something that you write off, and this leans into something that I've been thinking, and I think ETH's narrative, or the thing that is most valuable to ETH, looking internally to my own behavior, is it should be about securing value. Like, there's 100 narratives about ETH, about that it's oil, that it's I don't know, it's all kinds of things. It's money, it's oil. What is it? Is it the place where people do art? I think it's the thing that should be like secure value, in the same way that the United States has a humongous defense budget to protect its value, whatever that value might be, whether that's entrepreneurship, whether that's innovation, whether that's tech, and you have the defense budget. I think that is what ETH should be. And that's kind of what I'm hearing from you, where it's like, look, I just want, I have to have some, because when it comes to doing important stuff, that's where you want to do it. When I want to do, I described it as like big boy DeFi stuff, I'm not going to do it on Sol. I appreciate you can do it on Sol, and I appreciate all those people are going to, many people will still allow the possibility for you to do that DeFi stuff anywhere, whether it's AVAX or Sol or wherever. I'm just saying from a personal perspective, I have found that I want to lean into ETH on those occasions. So I think that's what it should lean into. And I think people find it hard to let go of ETH because of this belief in the decentralized thing, where it's just it's something for you to care more about, whereas I think the other things are more tech focused, whereas ETH is a bit more of a belief system baked into it. But what do you think about that?
I mean, I agree, but I also noticed that like my own argument is nonsensical to the extent that I can basically hold everything I need in USDC or Tether either way. And if I were to actually need to swap back to ETH, I can do that. Like, you don't need to hold a stash of ETH as for gas fees. That's certainly not the case, but I happen to accumulate it across different wallets and have bought some more actively as well. So I hold more than I need, but yeah, other than that, I perfectly agree with you. The other thing I want to do, because it is real quick, because the news is unfolding, and English, as you have said before, has pointed it out with the memes being decimated on SUI. So it seems to be the case that Cetus, which is the main LP on SUI, got hacked for apparently $200 million.
Oh, wow.
All the liquidity on all coins, even depegged USDC. And you can see, it's from a screenshot that I'm sharing on screen, that most of the coins are down anywhere from 75 to 92, 93%. So that situation is currently unfolding apparently as well.
Good. Good catch. Shout out English again for bringing that to our attention. Maybe one final thought on the ETH BTC thing before we move on, Ledge, is that it does appear to be the case that healthy ETH is healthy for every other single coin. ETH doing well means everything else does well. So, twofold question. Do you think the ETH BTC chart corrects further? If it does, I'm assuming that is good for the rest of the coins, thinking through the probabilities. And if it does not, do you think the other stuff can still perform? Because if Bitcoin keeps going well, I feel like other stuff can do well in an environment that Bitcoin does well and ETH holds still. I know that lots of people want to say that ETH has to go for everything else to go. Maybe that's the case for like smart contract platforms, but I'm reluctant to say that other things will be hamstrung by ETH underperformance in the future?
I think it's obviously way easier if ETH is going for other stuff to go as well. And it's very helpful because if ETH is going up nicely, and then you will have three types of coins: coins that move along with ETH, coins that obviously outperform ETH, and coins that move underperform ETH because that liquidity is being moved out of them as ETH is pumping, as people want to flock back into the main currency. And I always find that a good sentiment indicator versus having ETH being flat or going sideways and then looking at the altcoins. I think if ETH goes sideways or holds like stable anywhere in this range, the other stuff can do pretty well, even if BTC keeps hitting new all-time highs, which I think it will do. But I also think that if for whatever reason ETH were to dump and slide down 20% on the day, of course everything that's bound and tied to it will suffer as well. But generally, sideways tracking ETH is an okay environment. It's a positive environment actually for other stuff to do well and pump.
Okay. Interesting. I would actually just here recommend, sometimes I think, almost certainly we do this on crypto Twitter, where we just like over intellectualize things and talk about things in more detail than is required. I think that actually especially happens on the ETH side, to be honest. But I listened to a podcast yesterday with Arthur Hayes, and it was actually a Bankless one, talking like general thesis on like liquidity, macro, what's going on in the States, and kind of the administration's plan, along with Besant, to just kind of deal with the, talked about tariffs, talked about gold, talked about general money supply. I'd encourage people to just have a listen there if you're interested. Obviously, we don't know which direction it's going, but the general thesis of their money supply is increasing, and therefore prices go up. And sometimes we just over intellectualize it and try to pick the one that goes up most. But one of the biggest conclusions I came to when I wrote that long piece, Ledge, after our phone call, was, man, if you're not, this is like the biggest conclusion after being in space for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years now. Like if you've got no Bitcoin exposure, it's hard to keep pace. It's hard to keep that all-time high portfolio involved, because Bitcoin appears to be, at least so far, it appears to be the only thing that will definitively keep making all-time highs, right? ETH is far off all-time highs right now. So yeah, everyone's still hoping it's going to go, if Bitcoin goes to 200K, you're just assuming that ETH will go higher. But Bitcoin is the only one that's there or thereabouts. ETH has like fallen off in comparison. So that was the core thing from a portfolio reflection realization. Not having Bitcoin exposure, well, for me, if I didn't have Bitcoin exposure, it would have been a train wreck. Having Bitcoin exposure makes the whole picture like way, way better. So that's just a core reflection that I had. But maybe we should use that to go straight into the Bitcoin stuff. Ledge, we're going to talk about, just so people know, we've got the usual show running up. We're going to be talking Bitcoin all-time highs. Headline: Hype up 17% to $31. Can see a bunch of Hyperliquid accounts in the show today. Good to see you all. Welcome. We are fans. We like Hyperliquid, so we'll be touching there. We'll also be talking on FIFA, on AVAX, and then we've got the dial-in with Ovi from Rekt Brands coming in about 20 minutes to get into what's going on the Rekt side of things, what a brand coin means, and how he's kind of really taking that brand and hopefully going global with it. So really interested in that conversation. He also gives us a general take on the market too. Ledge, Bitcoin's at an all-time high. What do we need to know? What numbers are you looking at? What metrics are you finding interesting? Talk to us.
Yeah, absolutely. BTC has hit an all-time high a bit earlier of $111,500. The ETF inflow is still doing quite fantastic. Yesterday was a very good day with 607 mil in net inflows. The other thing I quickly want to check in with, if I know I basically touched in on that bet every day on Polymarket, but I feel like it's just a nice indicator for the question how high we could go. So obviously now that we hit 111K, 60% of the market believes that we'll hit 115K in May, which is within the next 9 days, and 10% even think that we might hit 125,000. The other thing that I want to touch on, and it kind of is connecting to what Rahim is saying in the YouTube comments. Rahim is saying the reason BTC is ripping and all alts are underperforming is because it's not retail buying, it's institutions. Google Trends show no spike in BTC search. My North Star for ETH price action is institution. And from a BTC perspective, that is actually very true. There is a report by River America, which is a company that allows you to buy Bitcoin. I'm going to bring that up on screen. That has it's titled "The American Bitcoin Advantage: How Americans Came to Own 40% of all Bitcoin," and it has quite some interesting figures in there that also go a bit into this direction as to what Rahim has been saying to the question who's actually buying BTC. So first of all, to the US's dominance, obviously the US makes up like 4% of the total world population, but it's estimated that the Americans own 40% of the entire Bitcoin supply right now. And out of all companies in the world holding BTC, 95% of BTC being held by corporations is American companies. And
having MicroStrategy probably helps in that metric.
Yes, obviously. By the way, I think Saylor is now up 22 billion in unrealized profits on all of his buys. I saw a tweet on that earlier today. In terms of retail versus institutions, that's the interesting one. So nearly 50 million Americans own Bitcoin. That's 14.3% of Americans. Comparing that to Europe, Asia, Africa, that's 3.4 to 3.6% for those other continents. South America is definitely doing a bit better, 6.6%, but clearly dominated by the US. However, if you take a look, going to skip through some of those things, even though they're super interesting. If you take a look at US institutions and Bitcoin ETF holdings, $31 billion of Bitcoin ETF holdings are being held by US institutional investors. 79.2% of global Bitcoin ETF holdings are held by American firms. So definitely is confirming what Rahim has also been saying to do with institutions buying BTC and the Google search trends not really reflecting a peak in retail interest. And then the other quick thing I wanted to take a look at, I thought that's interesting, because it's our age bracket, basically. I know that this is a US statistic first and foremost, but if you look at Bitcoin ownership by gender and age, the bracket which is most likely to own BTC is male 31 to 35-year-olds, where 40.5% own BTC. And then the next bracket is also male 41 to 45-year-olds. Also, quick side note, political orientation based on Bitcoin ownership. Yes, obviously, you have more very liberal Bitcoin owners, but looking at the rest of the political spectrum, there's not too much of an impact of where you sit. If like from liberal to very conservative, the distribution is pretty similar when it comes to holding BTC versus BTC non-owners.
Very, very interesting. So what's if you have to have a takeaway here, Ledge, what's the significance of Bitcoin or American Bitcoin dominance, if you had to say anything?
I mean, from a European perspective, it's it's sad, because that is obviously the next big thing. So is AI, and again, US is at the forefront of that. US always has been extremely good at embracing new tech, and it also speaks a lot to how accessible and open capital markets are, because you have the same picture with stocks, where it's way more likely that a US American owns stocks even directly compared to the average European, and it's that just extrapolated to this new technology. So US adoption of that stuff is just faster. I think for me, the key takeaway is to actually see that institutional dominance in numbers, and then also thinking what happens when retail actually starts to buy Bitcoin, but also thinking what happens when the rest of the world is waking up to buying Bitcoin. Because again, US is only 4% of the world's total population. So I feel like you can make the case that this market cycle up to now has been mostly driven by institutions pumping BTC, and the retail FOMO is not here yet. And if that retail FOMO is to come, things could get really crazy.
Okay, that's interesting. Let me give one thought on this. Then I want to talk Hyperliquid before we have Ovi from Rekt Brands come with us to give us his thoughts, and we'll talk Rekt. I think American Bitcoin dominance is interesting based on, I mentioned this conversation I listened to yesterday or the day before, Arthur Hayes talking on Bankless about where he sees things going moving forward. Obviously, we're in a macroeconomic environment where treasury yields have gone up. Foreign parties, I think, have been getting rid of some of their US debt, especially on the longer end. And what that has meant is, I think, people's confidence in the treasury ecosystem based on the tariff stuff is kind of declining. And gold has obviously moved up and Bitcoin has moved up. His prediction, his specific prediction, which I find interesting, though I have no specific guaranteed view on it, is that it will lead to capital control, i.e., in order for people to stop people taking money out of the states, there'll be specific things that happen, which mean they have to keep the money in, so you'll have capital control. And then what happens in an environment where there's capital control? You have the assets which are free, in inverted commas, start to become more valuable because they're free, in the sense that they're not bound by any regulation. In a sense, I think you've probably already seen the first instances of this with the Russia sanctions. I know people I don't know if there was sanctions across the pond as well on Russia, but in the UK, for example, Russians were having their assets frozen. And so like the weaponization of any kind of currency against other people is already driving people towards this scenario. But the fact that the tariff stuff have happened, and we might be moving in a world where, look, your capital is no longer as movable as you thought it was. I think, playing this thesis out, this was the thesis that was being shared. The idea is that would lead to a world where people get driven towards gold and driven towards Bitcoin. Extending that, I think people know that there's a certain amount of Bitcoin there's a certain amount of Bitcoin that the US holds already. And I think it's the most in the world compared to other countries, at least that's the known amount. That's more than other countries. And then second, there's a ton of gold, which is not valued at the proper amount at the moment. And they've always been wondering, like, people have always been asking the question, like, when are you going to revalue this gold? And the thought, I think, that was being shared on the show, which I'm kind of very open to, is that as people get driven away from, as people get driven into these harder assets, I guess this is the 3D chess argument, that then they can revalue the gold, they can unlock all of this additional value because it's being valued something crazy low versus the real value of gold now. And obviously they've got a ton of Bitcoin anyway, so they're not as bad off as you might think, at least from that perspective. Curious for a quick thought there, Ledge, before we kind of take it in the direction of Hyperliquid.
There's actually a slide on exactly that in the report that is confirming what you're saying. There's a caveat to it. I'll get into that in a second. So it's saying the US government has more Bitcoin than all others combined. The US government's Bitcoin advantage is greater than that of gold, where the US accounts for just 29.9% of the world's central bank gold reserves, whereas the US holds 66% of total BTC government holdings. And this chart here is showing the states holding almost 200K in BTC, and is reporting China holding 15K in BTC. Again, the headline is known government Bitcoin holdings. So other sources are saying that the Chinese also hold roughly 190K in BTC. Then again, other sources are saying that allegedly China might have sold $20 billion worth of Bitcoin earlier this year. So China is obviously the unknown in here. But even if you factored in that China has almost the same amount that the US is holding, and you do the quick math in your head, that would mean that basically the gold advantage and the Bitcoin advantage would still be the same.
Yeah.
But it's then also important to keep in mind that the number of BTC in the States is growing way faster than it's growing anywhere else. And also when it comes to the mining argument, there's been a slide on that said that mining hash rate is up. The US mining is up massively, 500% over the last 4 years, and 4 out of 10 Bitcoin are basically being mined in the States.
Interesting. Okay. Another good set of statistics. The final thing I'll say, because I want to talk Hyperliquid for 5 minutes, is one of, I posed the question 2 days ago. What if, trying to use some imagination, working through these scenarios, the demand for treasuries is going down, especially on the long end. And so my idea, or my thought, which is actually something that came up in this interview, was what if, in order for these stablecoin issuers to have stablecoins, obviously they buy treasuries already. And that was the argument that Stat said, oh, this is not a big deal. They buy treasuries already. But the point is, with regulation, you can force people to buy the longer end and say, look, you need to buy these longer treasuries that no one else wants anymore, which gets me super cautious about even stable coins. That's something I'm like really, really watching. Fine, we know that they're going to be mandated to hold a certain number of treasuries, and yeah, fine, they do that already. But if there's any mandate to own specific types, which are the longer type, which basically the market is moving towards not wanting, and they think that they can dump the treasuries on stablecoin issuers and holders in the long term, I think that's an interesting one to keep an eye out for. So that's something to keep an eye on. I want to touch on Hyperliquid for a second, just before we speak to Ovi, who we're going to be having on to talk all things Rekt in just a moment. Headline here, of course, with Hyperliquid is that it is up another 18% to $31. A couple of interesting metrics. Ledge, if you can share these on screen. We've got open interest hitting an all-time high record. And we have this other metric, which is, look at the fees. Ledge, can you open the simple fees link as well?
Give me 1 sec for that.
So open interest hit a record. And then we also had fees, daily fees yesterday, hitting 5 mil, 97% of which is being used to buy back the token, right? So fees going absolutely crazy on Hyperliquid. We've kind of been saying on the show from around $13, it's better to buy at 13 than 30. In fact, I need to go back and find that clip. I didn't buy enough at 13 as I would have liked. But what's your take here, Ledge, on Hyperliquid and its kind of outperformance?
Yeah, it's clearly something we've spoken a lot about on the show, very active ecosystem. And the interest on the timeline. So my timeline is being dominated, and it's not only mine, just Stefano said the same in the YouTube comments, is being dominated by posts about Hyperliquid. And I feel like every time I myself post something that I've been exploring this liquidity pool or doing this or that, a lot of people are reaching out to me and saying like, yo, this is the strategy that I'm currently applying. This is where I'm currently trying to seek an edge. This is what I have been doing. And the other thing that comes to that is I feel like the whale activity that we are seeing, which is also to do with this, where is it? With this record-breaking $1.1 billion BTC long position on Hyperliquid. It's not only obviously signaling major whale activity, as the headline is saying, it's also signaling a lot of trust. It's essentially saying that people have the confidence to trust Hyperliquid with $1 billion trade. Yesterday, when we looked at the numbers, there's been a bunch of whales actually having positions open on chain that were sized above 100 mil, so 9 to 10 figure trades basically being facilitated fully transparent on chain. And that is instilling a lot of trust. And we've seen that play out very recently with Aave as well. They hit $30 billion in TVL. Obviously, the Genius Act helped with the positive price action as well, and that helped the token jump a similar amount. Aave then was up 20% almost on that day where that has happened. So I think that all those big numbers help to reinforce trust and then also attract more people into the Hyperliquid ecosystem.
Yeah, I think that's broadly right. I think the numbers are still quite low in comparison though, right? There's not as many holders of Hype as you might imagine for something that's doing so strongly. Final take here. Funky, your hand is raised. Give us your final take on Hyperliquid, and then we're going to get into a conversation with Ovi about all things market and Rekt specifically.
Sorry I was late, gang, but I just want to say, first and foremost, kudos to you guys because you have been covering Hyperliquid for a very long time before people were talking about it all the time. So I think that there's just wanted to give you guys a shout out there. And I think Arthur Hayes had a great take on this yesterday, which this is sort of what, Legendary was already sort of alluding to in terms of he said this is the best advertising for Hyperliquid, right? Just the fact that you have these massive whales that are opening up. He said, "This is the best advertising for hype. He actually said, let's take this motherfucker to $100." Yahtzee, because I do think that it is sort of, and we just had somebody recording on the podcast yesterday talking about Hyperliquid and how this is going to change the shape of the tokenomics for many, many projects to come, like having these buybacks, generating this revenue. This is setting the gold standard in crypto for what projects should look like.
Indeed. I guess that's the vision, right? That is the bull thesis. And we'll just present that as the bull thesis for now. It's also very helpful to make money. A lot of crypto protocols do not make money, and therefore it's hard to buy back a token if you don't make money. So appreciate that insight, Funk. Let's keep the conversation moving though. Delighted to welcome to the stage today. We've got Ovi, CEO and co-founder of Rekt Brands, Rekt Drinks, Rekt Guy AI, and the Rekt coin, which is up another 8% today to 20 million market cap, roughly a 5 or 6x in the last month. Ovi, good to have you with us, man. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, man. Good to be back. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you with us. We've been talking a little bit about Bitcoin all-time high, which is obviously a very nice thing to be experiencing at the moment. Also, Hyperliquid. I also read you were like super bullish on vaporware quite recently, which I suspect has worked out quite well for you. Before we get into the Rekt stuff, how are you kind of looking at the market at the moment?
I'm pretty constructive here. Like I think I was quite loud in terms of banging the drum for buying risk in April. I just thought that was one of the, not a generational opportunity because things weren't off a crazy amount, but it was one of the best opportunities we've seen to buy risk in the last 2 years, I think. And I haven't, I've taken some profits, but I think we have a lot higher to go still. Like it's one of those things where I think we just need to get our heads out of all this like recent PTSD, recent scars, etc. Like it still feels like to me, despite how much we've moved higher, people within the space it still feels like to me people want to fade moves higher. People are just, have PTSD about round tripping. They're scared about things. I think there still is that, and I think this is one of those moments where we can go a lot higher if we have a big alt season, which is very possible. It's been 4 years since the last real alt season. The timing of it in terms of cycles makes perfect sense. And it's relatively clear to me Bitcoin dominance seems to have topped out here, but Bitcoin continues to drive higher, right? So Bitcoin dominance right now is about 65%. It was 40% at the peak of alt season in 2021. That is an insane amount of market cap, right? It's trillions of dollars of market cap. So if you do have a catch up, even if you have a drop to 55% or 60%, like that's a huge move in alts. And, God forbid you do get a drop all the way down to 50 or 45 or 40. That is just like an insane move where there's tons of coins out there which will do like a 10 to 100x. So I'm not saying it's definitely going to happen. Like, no one can predict the market. If we all could, then we wouldn't be here. But sure. I do think if you're a gambler like we all are, and you're trying to assess your probability and you're trying to assess your risk reward and you're trying to assess your EV, taking that bet is a great bet, because if you're right, you've got 10x to 100x trades on your book. If you're wrong, sure, you're going to be down whatever it is, 30, 40, 50%. Maybe you won't even be down. Maybe you'll just underperform Bitcoin. It's not that bad, but you don't get many opportunities in your career to take these shots where you have a realistic chance, a good chance of making that many multiples. So I think you have to just take the chance. I think you have to gamble, really. And I'm not saying it's going to work out, but you got to take the gamble. And if you don't, I think you'll always be wondering, like, what if I did? So there's my little 2 minutes for you on everyone just to take a lot more risk here.
Yeah, I mean, when you said that if we're gamblers, like you don't need the if there. Like people are here to
exactly.
People are here to take the risk. Maybe they just need the nudge. So what's your kind of construction at the moment then? Because I think one of the interesting things about this cycle so far is that not enough, it appears anyway, that not enough people own Bitcoin. But now one of the things I guess you're not necessarily pushing for in any way, but it's just your view that Bitcoin dominance might have topped out. And now, after everyone spent all their time in alts, missing the Bitcoin move, they're in danger of maybe going into Bitcoin when the other thing's going to move.
Yeah.
So is that kind of how you're constructing it in a way that, look, I guess some exposure to Bitcoin is always important.
Yeah. You can't not own Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin is Bitcoin, and it always will be Bitcoin. And over a longer period of time, it will outperform everything. You know, like I don't contest that for a second. But if you do have an alt season, which maybe lasts for a few months, maybe it's even shorter than that, I don't know, things are going to move a crazy amount higher, and then they're probably going to dump a crazy amount lower as well. Like, that's generally what happens. So I'm not saying like dive into alts and hold them for decades, because you're going to do much better holding Bitcoin for decades. But I am saying there may be an opportunity that's coming up. And I think people will have held alts for a long time, underperformed, and finally capitulate into Bitcoin. And people who are doing that trade right now, I think, may end up regretting it, because it's sort of like kind of like selling the lows a little bit. You know, I guess you're buying the highs on Bitcoin dominance. So just think it's important to remember, like, alt season doesn't mean it's important to distinguish and discern what alt season means. It doesn't mean every altcoin is going to go outperform Bitcoin forever. And you'll see stuff like, oh, XRP is going to be the new Bitcoin, and like this kind of stuff. Like, you shouldn't buy into that at all. But you should realize that this thing can happen over a multi-month period, and you want to have the risk on for it. And also you want to be taking profits during it as well. You can't get yourself trapped into this thing where things are going to go up forever. So I just think we haven't seen that move yet. So it's at the beginning of it, and we have a good opportunity to add risk. But yeah, don't kid yourself into thinking like whatever altcoin you bought is, is the next greatest thing, unless it's Rekt, of course.
Interesting. And unless it's Rekt, moving into this kind of internet capital market conversation, and talking of risk, there's been a lot of risk moving into the Believe ecosystem. For example, we first had internet capital markets maybe in the previous cycle, where people thought they were funding businesses. There's like a V2 of that at the moment, which is the Believe ecosystem, where you've got maybe some more prominent developers coming in. Essentially, it's the same playbook though, like hyper speculative, kind of funding the initiation of a company, also taking a cut from fees. You know, holders not having any real meaningful equity in those brands, so purely speculating on the price going up, probably based on maybe the founder of the coin or something like that. I was one of the people talking about at that time, saying that this is not really any meaningful ownership for anyone or participation. It's just wild speculation, in my view. And I kind of pointed out that you guys at Rekt would, kind of did things super differently. Do you want to explain like your view on what's going on in the internet capital markets meme? Like, what do you make of that, and your route to an approach in that direction?
Yeah, so it's a tricky one for the internet capital markets. Like, it depends how you really define it and what you mean by it. And
sure, definitions are kind of
they're a bit loose. Yeah, and I think the idea of, let's say, tokenized equity or tokenized private equity is a concept that probably falls into that umbrella, and is a concept that makes sense. You know, like right now we have this thing where you may make a private investment in a crypto protocol, and then you have a token, and the token doesn't, maybe it's a governance token, or maybe I don't know, it's like a sentiment token, doesn't really have much like economic construct or like economic mechanics to the actual company itself, but that's generally like your liquid way to then monetize it. But if you had a token which actually was tokenized equity, that's really powerful, because it suddenly makes the private investment market super liquid, right? And people can actually trade it, and everything can be done on chain. So I think that concept is pretty interesting. I think the recent stuff on Believe, etc., it's tricky, man. Like I think it's people get sucked into it because we've gone from like meme coins to then seeing these apps and stuff, and it's like, oh, this is like a real project by this guy who was like a founder. This must be really good. And I think people are getting scammed a little bit. People are sort of believing into this stuff because you'll see these theories like, oh, this guy has the largest newsletter, and he did these 2 startups, and you just assume he must be a good guy, right? And like there's a couple of coins that like I bought into, and then they dumped. I was like, oh shit. I was like, let me just go check out these apps that are apparently in the App Store, and I like downloaded the apps. It wouldn't even load for me. Like, it was like put in your mobile number to get access to the app, tried to put in a mobile number, didn't work, tried to put in US number, didn't work. I was like, fuck, like there's no reviews on these apps. They're in the app store somehow, but there's no reviews on them. Like no one's downloading them. No one's even tried these apps. People who are talking about it has clearly not even tried them. So I was like, this is clearly like, it's just a bit shit. So I think the problem I have with that space, it feels like there's a lot of scammery and it's just whatever narrative you can post. And I think some of these like tech bros coming in are clearly bad actors. And even though they're all doxed and all this kind of stuff, they're just coming in and extracting. So I haven't really seen, like Launchcoin itself is potentially a good platform because
the platform itself.
And that was obviously a good trade for anyone who got involved early there. But some of the projects on it, I just think it's worse than meme coins because at least meme coins are not selling you a dream that isn't untrue. It's just like it's a meme coin. And some of them are even like, this is a bundled meme coin. If you back the cabal behind it, they're open up about
the
that,
positive.
Right? Yeah, whereas these guys are just like lying to you basically, which is the problem I have. So conceptually, I think it's really powerful, but we need to have some good winners on it, I think, before people really get involved.
Can you just speak to like how difficult was it to do it properly? Like, so you guys went to give, I think it was 10% of the company to Rekt guy holders. You also did like a small round of investment as well to make sure that like your community could participate in the upside. But that's like a long legal process, which I guess is the reason why lots of people can't be bothered with it because it's hard. Like, what kind of process was that? Was it painful? Was it easy? Why did you do that?
Yeah, it's a long process, man. Like the whole thing took us 9 months, probably, I think, like from start to finish. And we did things the right way, like we gifted equity in the company. We went through a whole legal process to do that. It was done in the US. It was done through an SEC exemption. We were all KYC'd and everything. It's done with an SEC registered dealer broker. So everything was done in a way that was really, really by the book. And that takes a lot of legal resources. It takes a lot of time. You can't just do it overnight. Now that crypto regulation in the US appears to be going in a direction that's favorable to us, what we did now maybe could look somewhat like extra conservative, but it still makes me feel confident that we've done things in a way that I think is quite, very legally sound. So I think it's all been set up in a way which took us a lot of time, but it was done very thoughtfully, and we now have a pretty strong foundation in that regard where our community actually own equity in the actual company. It's not just like, here's a coin or whatever, but I do think the coin has its relevance too, which I guess we can chat about.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things you did as well was you kind of flipped the situation with like the physical world, right? So you started rewarding not just like NFT holders, but drinks purchasers. Do you want to explain like what the thinking was there, how you designed that, and why you thought that would be a cool thing to do?
Yeah, so the way Web3 has kind of worked is you'll dangle like an airdrop carrot to people who are doing things on chain. So it's like, hey, here's my new L2. If you come and bridge capital on it, you'll earn points. If you come and do a few trades, you'll earn more points. If you do some DeFi, you'll earn even more points. If you play games on it, you'll earn points, right? And then eventually you'll get an airdrop for those points. And for that network, it's good because they can boast a high number of users, high TVL, higher activity, etc., and they make fees. So it's sort of like, okay, we'll give you an airdrop in return for you guys coming and doing activity, and that happens on chain. So that concept is very powerful within Web3, and it's been around for a long time, and that's why I think Web3 is successful, because it rewards its users, and consumers really end up being community and potential stakeholders. That's why Web3 works really well. So we were like, well, what if we use that same concept, and instead of applying it to on-chain activity, why don't we apply it to off-chain activity in the traditional world and try and build like a traditional business, but with Web3 principles? So instead of saying like, okay, come on to like the Rekt L2 and do some trades and you'll get an airdrop, it's more like, okay, we're a brand, we have a product, Rekt Drinks, buy some, and then you'll get points for it, and then eventually that becomes an airdrop. So it's basically like the same thing. Instead of going on to, let's say, Abstract and buying a meme coin and holding it hoping for an airdrop, you're buying a product which you can actually, it's not like a nothing product. You can drink it, and you can whatever take it with you to parties and whatnot.
Give it out to a lot of family. A lot of my family.
Exactly.
Crates.
Someone told me they took it to a wedding the other day. They took 200 cans to a wedding, and it went down pretty well. But see, that works really well, you know, obviously for the purchasers. And I think people made up to 10 times their money on the first one. I think on this one, people have, you know, are probably made about 100% of their money back on it. But the other thing is, for us, it's a great marketing tool, because now there's like 500,000 Rekt drinks out there from what we sold in the real world, and people have obviously bought tons, so naturally they give them out. So it's like a very, very powerful organic marketing, where like someone's going to drink a big can that has Rekt on it 500,000 times, like, because all those cans are out there, right? Hopefully they don't all get thrown away. So that's like extremely powerful marketing in the traditional world. And so that's kind of like how we viewed it. It's like this Web3 stuff, like B2C style mechanics, links in with the traditional world. And that's allowed us to build a traditional brand using Web3 principles. And let's say you go buy a can of Coke. Your interaction with that is like, okay, I buy a can of Coke, I drink it, it tastes nice, whatever, and then I kind of like move on, and I give them my money to Coke. Whereas you buy a Rekt drink, you drink it, hopefully like the drink, and then you earn some Rekt coin. And now it's like you can sell it, or you can decide to hold it, and you own a piece of it, you know, for whatever it is for years to come. And I think this is something that I think, you know, for brands and challenger brands and that kind of stuff, I think it's something that people will start to use a lot going forwards if we do this well, which I think we're on the path to doing, I would say.
And talking about brands and the Rekt coin specifically, you made this interesting post a couple days ago sharing that you view Rekt as the first ever brand coin, and went on to kind of explain how broad of a term meme coins are. And we have those different subsets in there. We have obviously the culture tokens and others, and many people try to already coin different terms for different subsets. So what do you actually mean by Rekt being a brand coin, and how does that fit into the broader, basically, meme coin ecosystem?
Yeah, so look, as you said, meme coins are broad. Like Whiff, I guess, is a meme. Pepe is a meme, right? But Trump is a meme coin. It's not really a meme. You know, Mog isn't really a meme. Mog is like a culture coin. So like you have all these different subsectors, and I was like, well, Rekt kind of is a meme, but it's not really a meme. No one's out there memeing Rekt, but it's kind of like a movement or something people believe in. And for us, we've constructed it as a brand. It's like we have real products. We have a brand that people, I think, can identify with and relate to, and something that people want to rep. So it's not too dissimilar to the whole, like, okay, NFT is a digital identity, and you have your PFP, and that's your personal brand, and that's what you want to rep. It's not too dissimilar to that. But I think having a liquid token is a step up and a bit more powerful. So let's say you find a new brand, like a challenger brand, and you love it, and you buy some clothes or whatever from it, and you're like, man, this brand's going to take off. I love it. I really want to support it. How do you support it? You just sort of like buy its clothes, wear it, and you kind of like tell your mates, maybe you post it on your socials. And then let's say in 3 years' time, it really takes off and it's gone crazy. What do you have to show for it? All you really have is bragging rights, right? Like maybe you have some pictures from 3 years ago, and you can tell your mates, yeah, I found this 3 years ago. That's kind of it. You haven't really, benefited from any of the brand's success, despite being an early supporter and despite finding it early. And many people don't have the capital or access to private investments and stuff, right? So now let's say you have a challenger brand where you buy its products. Let's say you buy Rekt drinks and you get some of its token. Does the token does it own IP? No. Does it benefit from any of the revenues? Not directly. I mean, we've been buying back Rekt coin, so there's some indirect benefit there, but not directly. But let's say now Rekt drinks take off and we start selling, hundreds of millions of drinks worldwide over the next 2 or 3 years. Will the Rekt coin go up in value? Probably yes, because that's how attention trades in this space, right? So if you support this early and you're buying these drinks and you're just collecting these coins and you're holding onto them, and you were right in your belief that this thing was going to take off, and you hold onto your coins over the next 5 years, chances are you'll probably make a lot of money, and suddenly you're sort of like invested in the story and you're benefiting from it, and you're benefiting in the upside. And that's what I think brand coin is. Like, I think it's, in my view, it's the intangible value of the brand that is now a tradable asset. So think about something like, again, Supreme. On their balance sheet, they will have an asset which says goodwill under intangible assets, and that's going to be the value of their brand. And someone just estimates that. It's just an estimate.
Yeah,
it's the same thing for us, but it's tradable and it's crypto. And so, that right now the market's telling you the intangible value of the Rekt brand is $120 million, which is not an insignificant number. And that's what we can pitch to the traditional world and be like, this is what we're doing here. This is kind of taking off. And those guys are like, wow, like that's mental. So that's kind of like how I view a brand coin, I would say.
That's pretty cool that you make the intangible value being tradable, because ultimately that also means if you're an early supporter of a brand, let's not take Rekt, let's take something like, I don't know, take watches, take Vacheron, Constantine, Jacob & Co, AP, whatever, and you buy it and it goes up, you have to sell it. You have to sell the watch, the collectible, the whatever it is that you believe in. But in this case, you are basically separating that because the intangible value sits in its own coin and you get to enjoy the drink, and you don't need to store the first can from the first batch for the next 10 years.
Well,
the logistics. I mean, you can do that as well, but you don't have to. And
I think I'm not going to keep one crate just as a collectible.
I'm certain you're going to do that, yeah. But you don't have to, and that's the beauty of that. But you also mentioned another thing. You mentioned you started to do token buybacks, and also on the show today we talked about Hyperliquid using the fees to do buybacks themselves, and so many other protocols do that as well. Do you think that it now kind of becomes the standard, kind of like go-to expectation for protocols and coins, that the team finds a way to do token buybacks? Or do you think that really depends on the type of coin or protocol that we are talking about?
I think it depends on the team, you know, like in my opinion, just like in the equity market, if you're buying back your stock, it's a strong sign of confidence to the market, right? Like, you know, remember, like people are sitting on coins that are allocated to teams that are worth millions of dollars. And that's a lot of money to anyone. Like millions, I'm sorry, but like millions of dollars to anyone is a lot of money, right? So just, you can go one of two ways. You can decide to sell it and make you millions of dollars and kind of just like walk off and be rich. Or you can be like, no, fuck, like forget that. This is like a massive opportunity and this is really undervalued. We should be buying this back because it could be like even higher, right? And that's what the Hyperliquid team are doing. And that's also what we've been doing as well, because it's like, okay, this is what we're trying to signal to the market is the opportunity set here isn't just, you know, let's make this, goes to 100 million FTV, drops back down, and, you know, we move on with our lives. The opportunity set is much bigger and much grander. And even if you don't make it, that's the thing to aim for, right? That's the thing to be aggressive about. So some projects do buybacks, some projects don't. And I think the ones that don't, maybe don't have enough confidence in their project, or maybe they need, the founders need liquidity or whatever it is. I don't really, you know, want to speculate too much on it, but I think we'll see more and more of it. I think also it's a way to drive value to the token in a world where sharing fees is a bit difficult because of securities law. So it's another way to create a mechanic to drive value to the token. But I do think you'll see more projects do it. And you also have to be, the other thing is you have to be confident in your ability to generate revenues. Like the worst thing is you start doing buybacks and then you make no revenues and you're like, well, this week's buyback was like, you know, $100 worth of tokens, and the people are just like, ah, shit. So you have to, you know, if you have to be confident in your revenue potential, and then if that starts to grow and you do buybacks, people are going to be, oh shit, like this is now like super meaningful, basically. So
and the consistency of that revenue, because people otherwise would not pay too much attention to it, probably. You won't check Hyperliquid's daily fees. I mean, a lot of people will do that, but you won't check that, or you won't even know what's going on the revenue side, on the business side. But if suddenly, as you said, last week's buyback for a specific token was only $100, people were like, what is going on?
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. So
it is a strong vote of trust and confidence in yourself as a team to obviously do that.
Yeah.
So talking about that, like you started to move towards this bigger opportunity set. Like obviously you have been doing buybacks. I think you bought, a couple of $100,000 worth. I don't want to get the number wrong.
Yeah, that's right.
One at the lows, one a little bit higher. What is it that you're seeing that is, you know, I mean, I guess you're backing yourself on some level. But what is the two things I'm excited about? One, what are the catalysts for the brand coin moving forward? And second, you kind of touched on like these brands that you've been having conversations with, who are like hearing your story and probably like what the hell, like what the hell is going on here? This is like a super interesting thing that is happening. So what's like that excitement level? What kind of conversations you've been having that make you feel like this opportunity set is bigger than maybe what people might initially think?
Yeah, so like we did you're right. We did 200K worth of buybacks, and that amount that we bought back for Rekt Brands Inc. is now worth over 700K. So that's like, you know, we're not going to just like go and dump it on the market, but that's like an asset like on our balance sheet, which is great for our investors, great for all our shareholders, which are, by the way, all Rekt guys. So that's a good thing. And, you know, people always wonder, well, how do you ever monetize that? There's lots of different things you can do going forward, and lots of different partnerships you can have with bigger projects, bigger brands and stuff like that. So it's a really powerful tool to have on your balance sheet. And it's important. The other thing that's important to remember, and this is really important, the flywheel, is that we kept back about 40% of the token supply in the Token Foundation, and that's being used for future community rewards, right? So at the current market cap, that's about $45 million worth of tokens that's in this treasury that can be used for community incentives and everything. So that's a big war chest that we have, which allows Rekt Brands Inc. to generate a lot of revenue. And it's this flywheel, because like as the token goes up, the value of the rewards go higher. More people want to get involved because they want to get the token, and then it just keeps, you know, this virtuous cycle of like things just like helping each other out in a really powerful flywheel. And again, like when we've had since after the last sale, our drinks sold out in what, like 40 minutes. We've had tons of people call us up, like distributors, wholesalers, everything. That's been quite big. And I explained the story to them, and they're like, "That's just like mental, right?" It's just, and then I say, "So look, we now have 120 million market cap, and 40 million of that we have, you know, at our disposal for community rewards and to keep growing and building this thing. And one day, if we ever get to like $1 billion market FDV, that's going to be, you know, 300, 400 million dollars, depending on how much is vested at that time. So it's like a very convex thing we have here, where as it goes higher, it's basically going like this, this, and this, and this, and going up extremely, because it just benefits like the entire ecosystem and what we're doing. So when we speak to like the traditional world, we haven't really obviously we haven't told traditional brands how to do this, because this is not like our secret sauce. But I think it's also tough, you know, like people support this because it's a crypto native project.
It can't be done, man.
Yeah, look,
it can't be done.
We've been in the space for 3 years. Like people know me, they know good at, and we've worked really hard to get here. And this whole thing started out from like a free mint. So we have diehard supporters because people have made money, a lot of money without investing anything into it, right? Which is the opposite of what the space usually does, where people lose money from gambling a lot. So it's really hard. Like I think if Pepsi tried to do the same thing, no one would really care that much, you know, like there's not a story there for people to be like, like I have to, you know, be in this like Pepsi thing because I'm rooting for them to make it. You know what I mean? Whereas like I feel like people have bought into the story, and we are a little bit of an underdog story. Like I think people have faded us for a long time. No one really, you know, none of the big traditional media or big crypto publications writes about us. Like it's very like the whole Rekt guy story is an underdog story. So I think it's a good story people want to buy into and want to root for. So it's not really that replicable, you know. I think brands can use brand tokens and do really well, but it has to be done in the right way. You can't just go and do it. You have to build up a story over time. And we are, as of yesterday was the 3 anniversary of Rekt Guy. We are 3 years into this journey. This isn't something that I just did overnight. We've built this up over time. So it's important to have all these, you know, these factors in it to make it work. But I do think a lot of people will use this playbook if we're successful, and I think people can do really well at it.
I think you're right though. Like the secret aspect to it, it's like, sure, other people can try this, but you need those 3 years or however many years beforehand, with the reputation beforehand, to even attempt it, really. And I'm sure lots of people will attempt it without that. It'll go wrong. Brad coins might get a bad name, but like the thesis I can see, and it seems to be working out for you so far. Talking about the story moving forward, I'm conscious of time, so maybe it's the last couple of questions, give you a chance to talk about where you're going with it. Beyond sparkling water, for Rekt, I don't know if it was in a tweet or in a show that you were doing, talking about some of the other ideas you have going for the brand itself. Obviously, you've got drinks. That's your first product, and I think you've got like a blue one coming. I don't know what you've said about that so far, but beyond drinks, what can people expect?
Yeah, look, we're not just gonna stop at flavored sparkling water. It's still, believe it or not, like quite a big growth sector in the traditional world. But functional products, so stuff like clean energy or a focus drink or whatever it is, like amino acids, creatine, like all that kind of stuff is like a huge, insane growth sector, right? And essentially,
Legendary started smiling. He started his creatine thing
I started
along
taking
with testosterone doses. So I don't
Yeah.
know if you can get into that business as well.
Yeah. But like it's massive, and it also fits really well within like online culture and everything. And that I think is that entire space is fits also very naturally in with our branding as well, and our brand, like stuff that makes you feel like energized, right? So we've been in product development of drinks, other drinks that aren't just sparkling water, and we've been in product development of other products that aren't just drinks. So what I'm trying to say is like it's not just going to be sparkling water. Like there's the entire Rekt brand is going to have like a whole suite of things. And my goal is like, let's just make this thing like fucking massive and just be like, cool. Like I want to have like my Rekt this, my Rekt this, my Rekt this, my Rekt that. And just generally like live and breathe Rekt. Like that's what I feel like people would do. I feel like our community would do it. I would like, I use all these different products from random brands that I don't really care about. If I could have Rekt everything, I'd fucking have Rekt everything, right? So I'm just making shit where I'm going to use it. And I think in my head, if I'm going to use it, a lot of people will. So that's the idea. So, product development on this stuff takes longer than it does for sparkling water, because I do think we want to get the ingredients right. I do think you want to have like the messaging right. You can't fuck that stuff up. So we're working on that, and we are in the process of expanding our team, and we have, we've been working with experts in the sector, and we will hopefully have some full-time hires to announce soon as well. So like that stuff is rapidly being progressing, and no one really sees any of that stuff because it's all behind the scenes. You know what I mean? Like I'm not out there tweeting about that stuff. You're not seeing the conversations we're having behind the scenes. So it's only really when I come onto these podcasts that I can talk about it a bit more. But yeah, like that's the kind of stuff which I think is like the real big opportunity set in the traditional world, not even really in crypto. I think that's a big opportunity set in the traditional world. And I think that's what gets people excited when we speak about it with those guys.
Yeah, I just started to think I take a bit more than a dozen supplements a day. And then I started to think all of those could be Rekt. And then I started to think that I'm completely underexposed as a result of that.
That's the goal.
The new way to form the investment thesis is like, okay, well, how many supplements do I take? And that's the upside that you're missing out on, Ledge, because yeah, but to your point, Ovi, one of the things I think I asked back when I invested as well, a small amount, was I feel like we're moving into a time now where it's not just, for a long time, in crypto tokens, it was like, okay, who cares about the equity? Give me the tokens, right? Like realistically, that's how things have played out for a while. The token is where the value is. Valuations just ran and went crazy. But I think one of the first times I heard your one, and there was one other, I did the Orange Cap Games round as well, where it was like, okay, I'm kind of interested in this actual brand here. Like the actual brand, the actual equity has got some real world potential. And I guess that's what you're speaking to here, where like nowadays, final question, do you see this as a crypto opportunity? I mean, you've got the coin, and that coin is going up a lot, and so people are excited about that in the crypto world. But I guess that other brand thing could be as big, if not bigger. How are you seeing that?
Yeah, it's a good question. And we bounce from like different things that we get excited about internally, and sometimes like in Q1 when everything crashed, right, I'm like, like maybe crypto is a bit tough here, but like we're really like cooking hard on like the traditional side, and we're not worried because we think that side's going to do really well. And then now it's like crypto side is doing really well again. And so I think like I do kind of view them as like almost like not two separate things, but two things that have some merit and value in their own right. You know what I mean? But I think those two things have merit in their own right. And I think the challenge for us is like, how do we unify that and get those, like unlock those synergies so the whole thing can be like crazy? And I think my view is that crypto, we always talk about Web 2, Web 3, crypto, trad world, all this kind of stuff. My view is that in coming years, those lines will be much more blurred and much more merged, if that makes sense. And people won't differentiate between the two things. And that's when I think our potential here is, because we're an early mover in that. Like I think you'll have a world where like many new brands and new companies will all have their own tokens, they will have their own brand coins, and some will do really well, some will do really bad, and that's what's going to be there. But we have the advantage in being the first mover. You know, like there are other coins out there, like, which are probably brand coins. Like Pengu is probably like the Pudgy Penguins brand. It's not really a meme coin, right?
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure there are other examples of that as well. But we're going out there and just saying, like, we are a brand coin. I've never ever heard anyone use that term before. And we're saying we're the first brand coin. Like, I'm just saying this is a brand coin.
Yeah.
And you can categorize meme coins, maybe not. But that's, I think, our edge to. I want people to be like, okay, the Rekt case study was a very cool case study because they were sort of like trailblazers in what they did. And I want people to think, okay, brand coins are taken off as a massive thing. Which was the first one that kicked off the whole movement? It was Rekt coin. It was Rekt. And that's what I want people to start feeling. And I hope people start feeling. And if we are successful, then people will feel that, because people tend to, you know, try and replicate things that are successful. So it's on us to execute and get things over the line. I think the pipeline is all there. We just have to execute now. It's all execution risk. But so far we've been hitting the milestones, and hopefully we can continue to do so.
Love it, man. Look, I think we've gone over a bit of time here, but that was super interesting to us. I think a lot of the people in the audience, judging by the comments, finding it super interesting too. Can't bet against OSF. Trader Todd says, OSF, what a champ. Also,
that.
when F1 car, I don't know if you can go
into one day.
One day. Look, is there anything else that you want to share? I'm just going to get your profile up on screen in case anyone wants to follow along, if they're not following along already. Anything else we might have missed? Anything else that they should be keeping on top of?
Nothing else. Like, you know, please follow me. Please follow Rekt Rings. I would say, like, I'm not asking people to go out there and buy the token. Like, everyone can do whatever they want, and it's up to you. But what I would ask for is just please follow the story. Like, you don't have to own the token to support it. You don't have to even, you know, like it to just be interested to see what's going on. But I do think this is a really interesting use case of Web3, and I think it's good for the overall industry if we're successful. So even if you're not invested in the ecosystem, please follow it and, you know, see how we get along, even if it's just for yourself and even if it's just to find out what happens.
Sounds good. Good story. Very good story. At OSF_Rekt if you want to follow along, and at Rekt Brands, at Rekt Drinks are the handles for the Rekt brand accounts too. Ovi, it's been a great conversation, man. Thanks so much for joining us.
Always a pleasure, boys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being with us. Just a reminder to everyone else in the audience, we do this every single day, Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. Eastern time, for 1 hour when we don't have a guest, and an extra half hour sometimes when we do. We're live on X Video, YouTube, Apple, and Spotify, and Apple too. Take care. Have a wonderful day. We will see you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys.